the word transhumanism, I don't think is mentioned at all in the whole book. Is that deliberate? And if yes, why?
It is deliberate. I think to a large extent, the majority of humanity are transhumanists and just don't know it. They've never heard the word. Um, Anyone who has a smartphone is a transhumanist. Anyone who wears eyeglasses is a transhumanist. Anyone who's ever learned to read is a transhumanist. Um, in so many ways, humans are just clearly interested in things that improve their capabilities. The only difference between transhumanists, self-identified transhumanists, and most of humanity is that self-identified transhumanists don't just focus on what technologies and products are on offer today. They're looking and wondering what's going to be here 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 50 years from now. So they're kind of more forward-looking. But in reality, for most people, if you show them a service or a product or technology or medicine that will make their lives better, that's been shown to be reasonably safe and is reasonably priced, they'll embrace it.
So then, in other words, you accept transhumanism per se. You just didn't want to confuse people by putting that term inside of the book. Is that fair to say?
Uh, Partially. I also think there's transhumanism is a less unique philosophy than most self-described transhumanists believe. I was invited to join a group on Facebook called Transhuman Separatists. I just added to the group actually, and I left. I have no interest in being a separatist. We're all transhumanists in my book, and that makes the word not very useful.
Mm-hmm. I see. Very interesting. Um, and perhaps now is the time to bring the other word that is missing also from this book, and that's, or two words, that's the word technological singularity.
Mhm.
So, again, was that coincidence? Was that deliberate? And why or why not?
That was deliberate. Singularity is such a heavy-handed word. A singularity in nature is a place where mass goes to infinity. A singularity in mathematics is a place where we divide by zero. These concepts don't apply to practical futures, to what's likely to actually happen to planet Earth. So I think the idea of accelerating change makes sense. The idea of exponential change makes sense. That to me does not connote a singularity in human affairs.
That's very interesting. And hmm, I'm trying to again go back at the beginning of our podcast and see if we can connect this with your background and in particular your experience in coding and perhaps your experience with artificial intelligence while working on Bing.
Absolutely. Well, I worked on Bing. I helped start that team, and I worked there for 6 years. And so I work with artificial intelligence techniques every day, machine learning techniques. I worked with neural networks for 6 years there. Uh, Other techniques I can tell you about: boosted decision trees, support vector machines, the whole panoply of current AI techniques, if you will. And those algorithms are fantastic. They're incredibly effective at pulling signal out of noise, if you will. They are nothing like intelligence. They are nothing like human minds. So that's one aspect of it. A second aspect is the idea of either diminishing returns or kind of a superlinear difficulty or sublinear returns on computing power. So if you think about um, one of the ideas in the singularity that Werner Vinge came up with, really, was that a computer that is twice as smart as a human could then go on to create a computer that is 2.1 times as smart as a human. And that computer being a little bit smarter, then go make one that's 2.2 times as smart, and so on and so on and so forth until it just ratchets up. But that seems slightly implausible to me because for many things, in order to get twice as far in a problem, you don't need just twice as much computing power. You need 4 times as much computing power, or 16 times as much computing power, or 128 times as much computing power, or much more than that. So if you look at the basic equations of quantum mechanics, for instance, we are barely able to solve those for a system that has 2 electrons in it
Mm-hmm.
because they scale absurdly. The computational difficulty of even the approximations of those systems are the number of electrons in the system to the 7th power. So even as we have exponential increase in computational ability, the amount of that gives you an increase in solving real-world problems is far less than the gain in computation. Anyone who uses a computer sees this. There are many ways in which more computing power is fantastic. It's awesome. But does it actually feel qualitatively like the computer that you have today is 10,000 times more powerful than the one that you used 20 years ago? Um, can you write a book 10,000 times as quickly? No. I've written 3 books now, and I've got to tell you, the Moore's law has advanced, let's say a factor of 20 since I wrote More Than Human. I did not get the next book written in 1/20th of the time. If I did, I'd be very, very excited, but it doesn't work that way.
Yeah, that's a great example, and actually, it's a whole other very interesting and very substantive topic. But perhaps I'll leave that for another occasion and use it as an excuse to get you back on the show, because
Okay.
right now I'd like to move on to your latest book, because that's also another reason that I wanted you to be on the show today. So, can you tell us a little bit more about your latest book that you just finished?
Sure, I have a book. It comes out in about a year, in early 2013. It's called The Infinite Resource: The Power of Ideas on a Finite Planet. And if my first book was More Than Human, this is almost sort of More Than Earth, if you will. It's about what are the limits on planet Earth? How much can we grow our wealth, our resource usage, our energy usage, our population? How much food can we grow? It's about the problems that we face right now with climate change, peak oil potentially, freshwater shortages, running out of fish in the oceans, and then the question of how do we overcome those. And it takes the fundamental view that innovation, the production of new ideas, is the most important process we have. Or, to put it another way, our store of useful ideas is the most important natural resource that we have, because it can multiply or reduce the need for or substitute for any other resource that we know of.
So, despite all the doom and gloom around us in terms of recessions, environmental degradation, civil unrest, political unrest, and so on, you are still an optimist?
I am an optimist, but that doesn't mean that everything will get better or that there are no problems. There are very real problems. Climate change is a real risk. It's something that's happening. It is caused by human activity, and while it's possible that it will turn out to be not that bad, it's possible that it will turn out to be far worse than kind of the midline expectations. So it's a large looming risk. Oil production has been flat. The number of barrels of oil produced per day has been flat since about 2004. Despite the fact that oil now costs 5 times what it did in 2000, oil companies, who are motivated by profit, have been unable to pump more oil out of the ground. And that's even as China and India and the rest of the developing world are soaring in wealth. The Olagala aquifer under the Great Plains of the United States is dropping at a rate of 3 feet per year in some places as we pump that fossil water that takes thousands of years to recharge, back out. Overfishing of the oceans has caused at least half of global fish species that are edible to humans, or that we humans want, to crash to endangered levels. So we're doing very real damage. The question is, how do we overcome that damage? And does that damage pose an absolute cap on human prosperity? And the answer there is no, it doesn't, if we're smart. If we make the right decisions to encourage innovation, to encourage the production of new ideas in where we get energy, how we grow food, how we deal with water, and so on, then the actual fundamental limits to life on Earth are thousands of times beyond where we're at today.